Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. On the podcast today is Katie O'Brien. Katie is a brand and website designer for the interior design industry. And we're going to talk about the 5 website essentials that are needed for every website, how to tell if you've outgrown your website, and the most common portfolio mistakes that people make. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am excited to chat with you today. So we're going to be talking about websites. We're going to be talking about how to know if you've outgrown your website, what we need to be successful when we create a website. But before we get into all of that, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in business and what you've done and what brought you to the point of serving the interior design industry with building websites.
Absolutely. It definitely wasn't a straight line, the entrepreneurial journey. It's been up and down and curves and pivots. And it actually started back in 2011. I was about to marry my husband and we knew we were going to want a family. And we both were kind of like, I want to stay home with my kids that weren't there yet. And what do I need to do to prepare for that, essentially? So that was when I said, okay, I want to pursue an online business. And I went and pursued professional coaching. And so I went to a coaching certification through a program around here in the Northern Virginia area and was set on this online coaching business. And by the time my daughter was born, I had essentially given my notice to my 9-to-5 and said, I'm going to be staying home with my daughter and running this business. So I can't do the 9-to-5 anymore. And it worked really well and things picked up and I loved online business. And that was when I was dipping my toes into websites too, and just really falling in love with the tech and the design and everything that goes into it while doing it for my business and then some of my coaching clients as well. And it was when my son was born a few years later when I realized I needed to pivot. It was quit or pivot essentially. And I did think I was going to quit. I was like, I just can't do this, not till the kids are in school, because I still wanted to stay home with them. I wanted to be home all the time with them, but I also wanted a business. And my son proved that was going to be a lot more difficult than I thought originally.
Let me ask this, was it just, because I grew my business around my children. Yeah. So was it because of just having 2 kids and the amount of work of 2 small children? Or was it like, what made it, I guess I'm curious as to what made you think stop or pivot versus slow down and reimagine what you were doing? Like, what was that dynamic like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think we bit off a little bit more than we can chew in regards to, I looked at having my son and going on maternity leave at like the typical corporate environment. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take 2 months off because I don't need 3. And then I'll come right back in. And I had a wait list of clients. And really what it was we also had moved.
Were those coaching clients, Katie,
those were
at that
coaching
point?
Clients,
Okay.
Yes. So they were coaching clients and they essentially, and as you know, like coaching, you need a quiet, intimate space. Like you dig deep and that's a very kind of sacred space almost when you're in that relationship. So I had a newborn who wouldn't sleep and he also wouldn't go to anyone but me. So even like I would come out of the shower and I would put my son down to sleep. I'd jump in the shower and I'd come out and he would be wailing. And I think, why isn't my husband helping? And I would go in and my husband is holding him and he is just wailing. And as soon as I take him, it's quiet. So that was kind of essentially my 24/7, unless he was on my chest or pretty much on my chest, he was screaming.
That definitely will change the trajectory of the business, no doubt.
Yes. And it was, and essentially too, like, okay, do I should my husband watch him like upstairs in the corner room while I'm downstairs in the corner basement to have these calls? But as every mother knows, like they're not going to be able to be focused knowing if their kid is screaming or potentially screaming. And so that was kind of like, I can't do this. And also, I had a 2-year-old. So my daughter was 2 at that time. And we had also just moved. So moved into a new home. And so she started not sleeping either because of obviously new baby brother, new home, all of that. And so just, it was the family life that I was like, I can't do both. I can't do it. It's kind of invited that quit or pivot moment.
It's interesting. I will say that my business has shifted over the years from where it started. And every time there was some type of pivot, something was happening in our personal life or personal health journey that caused that pivot. And as difficult as it was in that time, they've all been good pivots, like moved me into a better place ultimately than where I may have gone on my own because of necessity to keep moving. And I love that you started the conversation, Katie, with your entrepreneurial journey hasn't been a straight line. We talk about on the podcast, I've said it quite a few times, and I wasn't the author of it, but you don't take the elevator to the top. It's up and down the stairs and around the building to get there. There's just not that super fast track that way. And I will say that even my business right now doesn't look like where it started. And I'm still growing and adding new businesses and doing new things all the time. So yeah. I love that. I love that journey. I also love, Katie, how you, and I think this really informs the way that you work now, is that you created the life that you wanted. You and your husband talked about and created the life that you wanted, and then built your business around that life. I've had multiple husband-wife teams and families on the podcast who have talked about doing a very similar exercise. I know I have my coaching clients do that at the beginning of the year. Where are you taking off time? What are you doing? What boundaries do you need to put in place for your home and your life? And then now let's go build the business around that, around what's available to the business. Because if not, the business can become a hog and it can take up everything. And then family life and personal takes the back seat. And while there may be times and stages in our life that we can do that, like I'm in a stage right now where I've had to pivot back to family. But I would say a few short months ago, it was all about business. My kids are grown. We were able to do that. But I would never want to have a business at the expense of my children. Right. I don't think anybody would. I mean, we want it all, is the truth. It's just, we have to prioritize what comes first and what comes second. And the priorities can shift based on stage of life, season of life, whatever's happening. So I applaud you for, number one, even thinking to have the conversation. And then number two, realizing that what you had built at that time was not going to serve the ultimate goal of your family. But then being able to kind of reimagine it for what is another thing that you do that's not so client facing, that you've got to sit there with them in that intimate space so that you can continue to grow your skills and use your talents and do something different.
Yes, absolutely. And I was kind of at that moment where I feel like everyone who wants to start a business, if they don't have that clear idea, they're making all those lists. What can I do? What am I good at? What can I excel at? What can I make money at? And for me, it was like design, tech, websites, online business, marketing. So all of that I loved. And my husband was actually the one who was like, you could build websites for money. Like people will pay you for that. Where I was mindset wise, I was like, no, everyone loves to do their own websites. Like everyone is doing what I'm doing and loving it. And he's like, I don't think so, Katie.
That's so funny, because in December of 2012, before I started this business, the consulting business and coaching business in January of 2013, I had said to my husband, I don't think anybody would pay to talk to me about all these things. And we went out to dinner at a Japanese restaurant. And this is no lie. I had been taking courses. I kept thinking that this is what I wanted to do. I'd gone back to think about going back into counseling, like going the more medical, psychological route of things. Then I thought, no, I want to do coaching. So I was exploring all that. Anyway, we go out to dinner at a Japanese restaurant, one of those family styles, hibachi.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there with our kids. They were in middle school, high school at the time, maybe early high school. And long story short, I start this conversation with a mom with 2 little boys. We're all sitting there together. She leans around me and looks at my husband. She says, your wife should write a book or start a business because people would pay to hear what she has to say. Out of the blue, she had no idea what I had just said to him before we went out. I started crying.
Aw.
And that's when it hit me like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a minute. Other people are seeing things here that maybe I am so blinded because it's easy for me, or it's in my sweet spot that, again, we think, why would people pay to do this if we love it so much? And the truth of the matter is that is our superpower. That's usually what we're really great at, where we've been gifted. And when we kind of recognize that and work in that, so much more fun to get paid for what you already love doing than the drudgery of getting paid for something you hate.
For sure.
So you started then offering website design and build services. Is that how that kind of started?
Yeah. So honestly, I had a mindset problem in the very beginning because it was kind of like, who would pay me? And I always looked up to website designers and developers, and I would see their businesses and their beautiful websites. And I just kind of had that imposter syndrome. Like, that could never be me. Like, I could never have that business. So I actually started by providing those services, but calling myself a virtual assistant, completely downgrading what I was doing. And just, I'm essentially going to build your website, design it, develop it, but as a virtual assistant. And that opened a lot of doors for me, but I quickly learned that I was doing a disservice for my clients. And the reason is, a lot of times, depending on the field, a lot of time virtual assistants are, the business owner tells them what to do, how to do it, what they want it to look like. And me, with the background that I had, I would get into their websites and I'm like, oh no, like, this isn't serving you. We need to change this. We need to do that. Or, oh no, the tech side's really messed up, or let's move this design. And so I had all this like creative and strategic juices flowing. But then as the virtual assistant, I almost felt like, okay,
it wasn't invited in.
No, it wasn't.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'll do that, but I'm not gonna be proud of it, and it's not gonna help. Like, you're gonna want to change this. Like,
right.
It's not
what
gonna
it did
work.
was it took you out of the driver's seat for what you knew needed to be done.
Yes, exactly. And so it was just it really was just a couple months of that. And I realized I needed to bump my prices up. I needed to own what I did. And so it was funny. I took a web designer and developer course just so I could feel official. And I knew everything that was on there. I was like, okay, just check, like, okay, I got it. And
but
so
sometimes that type of education is great because you go, okay, I really do know what I know.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly what it did.
Yep. It's affirming.
Yeah. So that was really it. And most of so since then, that was the very beginning of January, or very beginning of 2016 is when I started building and offering website services. And then I was coming essentially out of the coaching industry. So pivoting from that. And so a lot of my clients were professional coaches. They were service-based businesses. So it fit really well because I could speak their language and I already knew the online business world really well. And I really did that for probably, I don't even know how long that was. So a couple years into that, and it was about a year and a half-ish ago is when I was like, okay, I want to work with interior designers. I want to work with home professionals, really interior designers, like people in that space. But again, it was a mindset thing where I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I'm so successful and I'm so well known in this niche of coaches and service providers. And I can't pivot again. Like, who am I to pivot? All this success essentially is what I'm telling myself. And then finally, I was meeting with a friend of mine who also runs a business, and I had this epiphany one day of, I want these clients, but I'm not telling anyone that I want to work with them. Like, I'm not saying it clearly. I'm not articulating it. My website doesn't speak to it. My social doesn't. It's always like service-based business. And so finally, during one of our calls, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to rebrand. I'm going to change all my copy, all my marketing, and I'm not going to take any new clients. I'm going to focus on interior design websites, projects only. And she was like, okay. And that really, like, last year was kind of the rebrand and the rearticulating my message and so forth, and then offering that, and then kicking it off obviously this year too.
Well, and they are, me having worked in both worlds, they are extremely close in that service-based mindset. It's still service-based.
Yes.
It's just a more defined service-based offering. I get the question all the time in my coaching, Michele, will you coach other people. Well, I have. I've coached all types of industries, but they've all been service-based because that's what I understand. That's what I've lived. That's what I've breathed for 30 years of business. And so it just makes more sense to me to talk to them. The language is a little different here and there, right?
Yeah.
The things that we're using, but it's really very much the same. But I love that you took the leap, you changed the words, you put it out there, and then you said, let's go. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So with all of that knowledge behind you, let's start by talking about what you believe the 5 website essentials are for interior designers. So if you're an interior designer listening, and I call that whole umbrella of interior design home professionals, what is it that they need?
Sure. Yeah, I have kind of put it down into 5 essentials that I feel are really important. And it's definitely not something where you can joke, oh, okay, I'll just add this to my homepage or I'll do this. It's kind of the bigger picture, because I feel like websites really are big. Yes, they're strategy. They're a big picture marketing tool to support your business. So the very, very first one is concise and intentional copy. So website copy, the words on your website are so important. And I feel a lot of people, even who come to me or they'll reach out to me for a website and we start talking, and then I start talking about their website copy, it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. They're not like when you think website design, you think pretty and strategic and flowing and all that, but the words on your website are so important. And so essential number 1 is really concise copy that's speaking to your target audience, that's clear, it's to the point, and, helps them know like what that next direction is and moving forward with you.
That is so true. And I think that we get so used to words or phrases or ways to speak that we don't know what it's like to be on the other side of our copy, if you will. And so it's really having that person or that expertise to say, I'm coming in looking at this fresh, not knowing what's in your head, your mind, your brain, or your intentions. This is what I'm picking up from your copy. I know I've had to have people look at things and go, can you understand this outside of my brain? Because we put things together in our brain and make assumptions and take the leaps that they don't always take when they're reading it. I mean, you can look at that when you build support documentation or anything like that, and people are reading it and they're like, how did you get that? Where did you go from there? And so I love that. Clear, concise, very intentional. I'm very big on that. And then also you're leading them down a pathway. So you're telling them what to do and where to go next. You're not leaving them hanging.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. All right. What's the second thing?
So the next one, it talks more design-wise, so the aesthetic. And with interior designers typically providing a luxury service, their branding should match that service. So really just an elevated brand design. So that means everything unified, cohesive, crisp, your logo, your fonts, the color palette, all of that being a very elevated experience, no matter where they are on your website. And then also kind of taking it another step further on your social media and anywhere else you're showing up online.
That consistency is key. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I remember just something really simple, putting a headshot out there and using a different headshot for every social channel that you're on. And people are like, who are you? Sometimes having that same picture go across multiple channels helps people recognize who you are, and having a good, clean picture of yourself. I've even seen beautiful brands and then they use an old headshot. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Don't do that.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is if you go to the grocery store, can someone recognize you at the grocery store? I mean, granted, you're not going to be all glammed up, but are they going to know who you are?
But you should still look similar.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like in the same decade.
Yes.
Is usually helpful. Okay, so we've got concise and intentional copy and aesthetic so that your branding matches your service levels.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, what's the next one?
So the next one is what I call a strategic flow. And this is really...
Oh, this is getting me going here now. Go ahead.
Right? So really strategy and then the flow of your website. Thinking before you create or design or do anything on there, number 1, what's the point of your website? What's the goal? What do you want visitors to do? And so sometimes people were like, well, I don't know. I've never thought of like what the goal of my website is. And really it's that primary call to action that you want people to take. So let's say it's to learn more about your services, maybe download an investment guide, book a discovery call. So that's the primary kind of call to action, the primary goal there. Then everything else, every button, every page, every design element on that website should have a very strategic and seamless flow that moves people closer to that goal and call to action.
Now, do you find you get pushback on that when you talk about that with your clients when you're actually doing it? Or do you think they understand that? Is that something that, I mean, most people, I think, understand that there's a major call to action, and it's usually on a design website to contact us if you want to know more, or like you said, download this document. I'm asking, I guess, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of actually doing it, do people like get on the train with the flow, or do they go, oh, I don't like that? Or do they get into the details too much there?
So honestly, most of the kickback I get is like in the very beginning because they're not used to it and they're like, well, why? I don't think that's necessary. Like my about page should just be about me and I don't need a button on there. But once we get into it and when I provide the designs and I talk through it with a design review video and I explain everything, and sometimes they won't, like their copywriter, or they won't even put in the buttons or say what they want it to be. And I will put them in there because I'm like, we need a call to action here. And then they scroll, we're going to need another call to action. And once they see it, they're like, wow, this is so clear. So it supports the kind of just the overall flow of the site itself. So once they see it, they're like, oh, this makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny that you said that. I can remember, I mean, having had websites built for years, being suggested that there was multiple call to actions like on a page as you scroll down. And I kept thinking, that feels so salesy. That feels so salesy. And the truth of the matter is, it wasn't salesy. It was making it easy for them to click.
Yeah.
And if I had to wait for them to scroll all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom to move to the next piece after they had consumed some amount of copy, it was actually making it more difficult for them. But I didn't want it to be like the Ginsu knives, call me now, call me now, call me now. I mean, that's all that I could see in my brain was that flashing light of call me now, call me now. And I was like, oh, that feels so yuck. That feels so yuck. But in actuality, it wasn't when placed properly and moving you through the flow.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're going to get people who land on your website, any page on your website, and they're going to read that one-liner and be like, this is my girl. What do I do? How do I get in touch? And they're going to want to take action right away. Or if it's a referral from someone and they're like, okay, now what? But then you're going to
don't want to make it hard.
No, like, and then you'll get people who are like, I need a little information. Like, this sounds good, but tell me more. And so then they'll scroll. And then at that point, they'll be ready. And then you have people who will scroll all the way to the bottom and be like, well, now what do I do? That was great, but what now? And so, and this could be, you could definitely, obviously there's not going to be one single call to action. You're going to want to link to your services page and like link to the about page where appropriate. You're going to want to, grow your email list. So that's going to be a call to action too, but really clearly identifying the structure of your business. What is the primary goal of your website? And then what are all those other secondary goals that will then support that primary?
Awesome. All right. So what comes after strategic flow?
Okay. So the next one, I always want to start with this, but I think it's pretty like everyone talks about it, but it's photography. But the photography is not just professional, but relational. So your ideal clients and your audience, how are they relating into the photography that they see? So using photos of yourself and of your projects and really telling a story along with that fits your personality, showcases your services, the style, if you have kind of aesthetic, or even just the broad range of services that you provide, showcasing that in a way with really professional photography.
I did a podcast with Katrina Maxwell, Cat Max Photo, and she is one of the brand photographers here in Atlanta that I work with. And in that, and I'll link it in the show notes for anybody who's listening. But one of the things that was really great about my experience working with her and that we kind of dug into on that podcast is we started having conversations about my social media and my website and all the different pieces of marketing that I had. what story did I want to tell? What different storylines did I want to tell? We used it. So you'll see some of my pictures are like me holding a stack of some of my favorite books. I'm an avid reader. Some are me playing with my two little dogs or hanging out with my daughter-in-law or, whatever it is that I'm doing, but telling a story through that. And I think that's so important. It makes me think about when you go in to buy a home and you're deconstructing the home to some degree so that it looks more like a house, like something that somebody could move into. Like you're taking some of your personal out, but opening it up so that their personal will fit so they can see themselves in that space. And if you think about it, that's kind of what we're doing here is we're making our potential clients, those that are seeking out interior design help, we want them to see their home and their life in our pictures, not look at it and go, well, I couldn't live there, or that's not about me, or I don't fit that, because that's going to be kind of that self-eliminating picture that they're going to self-edit and say, I don't fit. I mean, even if it's an aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
But I love that. Just create the same kind of story that you want to tell, and then tell the story well, right? From the beginning to the end, tell a story.
Absolutely. And I think it's too giving your personality on, especially with your headshots and your brand photography, show up as yourself, and then the right people are going to want to do business with you. So for me, a lot of my headshots, obviously I'm smiling and I'm laughing in some, but I'm also talking about websites. But I've had a lot of clients reach out and they're like, you just looked fun. Like you do tech and you do websites and you do all the things that I hate, but you look like you do it fun. Like it's like, yeah, we have a good time. Like we laugh, we joke, it's light. It's not this heavy, scary thing to do. But the same thing with interior designers with their headshots, but then even also with the photos that they're using on their portfolio. Tell a story of that project. Use copy within that too to tell that story so they can kind of step inside that project and understand it better.
Right. I love that. I love that. I'm a big fan of some of the before and afters too, because sometimes you look at those pictures and you think, wow, that building or that home or whatever started with great bones, or it started with so much going for it. And when you can see where it came from and what it moved into, that tells a huge story, even without copy. Started here, ended up here. I can see that. So then I can create the story and start creating a story even for my own home. So just not missing the before and after aspect of storytelling, I think is important in an interior design world.
Yeah, absolutely. I just have a client who's going to start next month, but we're working on kind of getting all of her stuff together for her website. And one of those things is what we talked about is kind of having that little thumbnail of a before picture. Because she's like, my pictures alone, they're fine. Like everyone can kind of do this. But you put that before photo out and it's like, wow, look at that transformation. So really showcasing that on those project pages.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest storytellers is I follow some accounts on Instagram that are just like I think one of them might even be like before and after design. Yeah. And it's just people from all over the place going, here's what it looked like. And here's what we did. I love the flip of furniture that way. Here's what it looked like. We cut off the legs and redid this. And here's what it looks like. And you're just like, whoa, like that is inspiring to me. It's a good thing I have a business or two right now, because I would go like buy furniture and chop it up in the garage and make something else out of that. I mean, my husband's all the time going, what are you doing? For Christmas, I asked for a bottle cutter so I could learn to cut up wine bottles and make candles. He said, Michelle, what are you doing? You have no time. What are you doing? But I watch these things and I'm like, oh, that looks so cool. Like I could step into that story. Even if I can't, I feel like I could step into that story. So I think it's great. I mean, I even try to do that on my website. I want people to step into the transformation that they can have in their business, the same way that they want their clients to step into the transformation that they could have in their home.
Absolutely.
All right. So what's the fifth thing?
So we kind of touched on this a little bit, and you nailed it. You're like, it's got to be easy. So that really is the fifth tip, is the overall ease of your website. So how easy is it for them to navigate your website, associate your brand and website with the experience that you're going to provide them? So that service, how like tech terms, we'll call it user experience or usability of it. How easy is it for them to understand what you do, who you do it for, and then how to get started?
Something that I find very interesting is, and this will probably lead us into the next conversation we're going to have, is my website has probably been rebuilt 5 times in the last 10 years. Like every 2 to 3 years, I go in and we overhaul it.
Yeah.
Because what happens is over time, we're adding in, add this, do this, meet this need. And then you realize it's gotten jumbled and it's no longer maybe easy, or it needs to be simplified, or you've made some small pivots in your business so that something was relevant a year or two ago is no longer relevant now. I'm in the process. I just had a new website built last month, and it's clean and it's fresh and it looks so amazing. And it makes me turn around and look at another website that I have and go, okay, that one we need to probably go in and edit a little bit, just because it's been almost 3 years and it's been accumulating, if you will. It's kind of like a room that accumulates. And every once in a while, I have to go in and take everything out of the room and just put back in what I want inside that room. So when we start and we do these 5 things, we also have to keep them in mind as we grow a business/website, right? Not just when we build it the first time.
Right. And it really is, for me, when I'm working with clients, I want it to be as timeless as possible in regards to helping and allowing the website to evolve as their business evolves. So your business, my business, every online business owner that I know, their business is always evolving in one way or another. And so your website should be evolving right alongside with it. And so making that easy and streamlined and simple and having it still support your business is really important.
Right, right. So with that all said, then Katie, how do we tell if our business has outgrown our website?
So I would say my number one kind of sure tell sign is if you're frustrated with your website. So if there's any negative energy, I guess you could say, like, because I have people who they're avoiding it. They don't use it. They don't really send people to it. Or if people like, oh, I saw you on your website, and they kind of, oh, okay. Because they know, they know it's not matching the level of service that they're providing. It's not matching the business that their business has evolved to. And so with that, it's the frustration there, I think. But also if it's making things more complicated than simplifying. And so I'm a big believer that your website is like your strongest marketing tool, and kind of all of your other marketing, all of the other avenues are kind of just arms to your website. So your blog, you can have on there, that can be your content marketing, your email marketing, your social media marketing, all of that the goal should be to get them back to your website. And then your website is strategically built to achieve that primary goal that we established in the beginning. So if it's not doing that, revisiting, maybe I've outgrown this here.
Right. About how often do you recommend people go in and do an audit of a website to then determine if they've outgrown it? Because sometimes it's just updating a few things. It's not always a complete overhaul. Sometimes it's just a good, thorough editing, updating, changing some words, maybe adding in a new lead magnet, doing some small things. And then at other times, it's like I can remember when websites first evolved years and years and years ago, like personal small business websites. They don't look like they do now. You didn't scroll down the page the same way. It was very static on the page, and things were just different. We interacted with data differently. We interacted with the websites differently than we interact now. We expected there to be certain things that maybe we don't look for anymore. We couldn't load pictures like we can load pictures now. I mean, just so many different things that just tech evolved. But how often do you think we should be doing those audits?
So I definitely say audit your website, kind of just do a full review, bare minimum once a year. So I like to kind of couple this with your beginning of the year planning, end of the year planning, however you kind of have that. Sometimes people like to do this midsummer because things are quieter then, sometimes. And so just kind of going through, I actually just published a blog post. It's like an annual website review where just go through your list, ask yourself these questions, and depending on what those answers are to those questions, you'll get an idea of like, okay, we're getting close to a website overhaul, or like, okay, I just need a few more sales pages, or I need to hire a copywriter, clean up the copy, maybe get my updated headshots on there. And so I've had a lot of clients over the years, so building websites since 2016, a lot of them will come back to me and I will say, I can probably count on one hand, I don't even want to say a full hand, on people who have come back and been like, hey, I need a whole overhaul. And the reason that those few people have, it's because they've completely changed their business model. They've gotten new headshots, so all new messaging, kind of have a whole new vibe to their brand and their aesthetic. And so it needed that overhaul. The other people, they reach out, hey, can we add this? Hey, can you update the portfolio? Hey, can we just do this thing? Or I have a new service. Can we change the way that this looks? And so allowing their websites to evolve without having that full overhaul.
Right. That's nice too. I know for me, it's been important that I can add in small things, take out small things, keep it fresh, keep it moving, but at the same time, not feel like I'm having to throw the baby out with the bathwater every single time that I go to do it.
Yes.
So when we're looking at our portfolios, Katie, what are 3 common mistakes, or are there common mistakes that people make when they do it? Or do you see things? It's funny how we see trends. I was telling somebody the other day, you almost don't even know it's common, or that it's trending, or that it is an issue, until it happens 2 to 3 times in a row in a short amount of time. And then you're like, oh, I'm starting to see a repeat here. I'm starting to see a pattern. And that's something we need to address. So what kind of things do you see like that?
I would say with a portfolio, one of the biggest mistakes I see. And even I think it's hard because I think a lot of very well-known, very well-established interior designers kind of do it this way. And so I think we look up to them thinking we should do it the way that they're doing it. That's the best of the best and the most effective way. When in reality, they can afford to break the rules because they don't need to follow the rules per se. But for me with a portfolio, it's one of the mistakes that I see is only having photos, or kind of just front and center. You have this huge photo and then you scroll down and maybe there's like a one-liner and then you have a whole bunch of other photos. And so it's like, okay, these are beautiful. Now what? Like, so essentially the person who's visiting your website, it really doesn't tell them anything aside from they think that maybe you do projects and you can take really beautiful photos. And so it leaves so many unknowns for them. And so to really effectively utilize your portfolio page, which is probably the most common visited website page on your website, aside from homepage, is to tell that story. So to kind of go back and to group your projects together. So you have one featured project. Okay, what's the name of the project? Where is that location? Putting not obviously the address, but the location, get that SEO juice in there, and then tell the story of the client. Why did they reach out to you? What services did you provide? And all of this can be done in like 2 little sentences.
Right. And one of my favorites to see is, what problem did you solve?
Yes.
Right. So not just here's all the pretty stuff and here's what we did, but the challenge in this kitchen was this, or the challenge in this space with the lighting was this. And here's how we saw it. Like, to me, those are the ways that make me think. I'm a strategic thinker, but that's the way that I look at it, going, not just did you make it pretty, but the functional, it's kind of that functionality conversation without being as direct. The challenges they have, like, for example, I just had 2 chairs recovered, antique chairs for my office. And I wanted a purple velvet because why not? Right. It's my color and I love it. But I ended up going with a performance velvet because my kids are grown, but I've got 2 little dogs and they're 11 and 14 and they're just dogs and they want to jump up on those chairs and I wanted them to do it. So the story of why I would choose a performance fabric would be so that my dogs and my kids and whoever could come over, and if I have grandkids and they spill, I can wipe that right up. I think sometimes those things that we can tell in the copy, and as we group it and as part of that story, which kind of goes back to the way we built the website with that kind of forethought. It's when you're updating and adding and changing and developing to do the same thing. It's another thought that I had too, Katie, when you talk about grouping them together. If not, I told this story the other day. I can't even remember if I've told it on the podcast or not, but I went and stayed in this beautiful, beautiful home one time, and they gave me the master bedroom. And when I got there, I realized there was no closet. Like there's no closet in the master bedroom and not even in the master bathroom. I had a sauna. I had a fireplace in the bathroom. I had a jacuzzi tub. I had all the things. I didn't have a closet. And I said that was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. I've never been in a bedroom without a closet, like not even an armoire, like nowhere to hang anything. Like there was no hanging ability, I guess, unless I hung it inside the sauna. There was nowhere to hang anything. Okay. Well, the same thing happens when you just put random pictures on a website. We have no way to collect them. It's like having a bunch of clothes on hangers and nowhere to hang them, nowhere to pull it together, nothing to hook it on. Yeah. So there's no hook that we're giving them for that picture to help them understand. And you don't even realize how much you need it until you go to a bedroom with no closet. You're like, this is really weird. But I think it's the way I've been even thinking with some of, I've come back and used that. It stuck with me as such a learning moment to come back and go, hey, where am I even providing education, but I'm not giving them a hook to hook it on? Because that's why people, I think, struggle with financials. They look at a financial document, but they don't have a hook to hook it on. What does it mean? It's a flat piece of paper. It's like a picture that's not in an album or that's not in a portfolio. You don't know the reference to it. You don't understand the meaning behind it. It is an outlier instead of part of a collective. And it's that collection that tells the story, or that gives us, even if it's one picture, if there's two sentences that give us something to hold on to and to hook onto. My son is dyslexic. And I can remember when we were going through and I was learning how to teach him through an Orton Gillingham method. And one of the things they said was they have different file cabinets. So he's smart, he's learning, he can get it, but he's using different file cabinets, different hooks. So you have to find how his brain hooks, and his was verbal and audio. So he could hear something and he can memorize entire movies, but reading it was different because of the visual aspect. So we had to learn how he interpreted data and what hooks he used. And I think it's the same thing when we look at a picture and when we look at that story, whether it's our brand story or whether it's our aesthetic story or the story of what we can do in your home or in your coaching or in your financials or in whatever it is, the story we're telling, it's giving them something to connect it together.
Absolutely.
So when you start working with a client, how do you go through this process? What does your process look like when you bring them in to do all of this work? Because for those listening, they may be like, oh my gosh, I don't have a story to tell, or, oh my goodness, I don't even know how to make this easy. And it all feels so hard and complicated and overwhelming. And I mean, I love tech, right? I do. I love tech. I'm a tech entrepreneur, but I'm telling you, tech can make me take my head and bang a wall. And I'm glad that you're smiling, but there are moments that I am not smiling dealing with some of the tech and all the different connectivities that we do. And so it is a lot for those of us who even know it, even more so for those that it's not their sweet spot. How do you calm nerves and take them through a process?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. And I'm definitely not immune to those tech headaches. I feel like when it comes to websites and online business, like I am there, but like when it comes to learning like the new social media apps or my phone, like I don't want to get a new phone just so I don't have to learn how to use the new one.
Right.
So I get it. But in regards to the process, a lot of it is done. It's kind of set up for success in the prep work. And so I start with so of course we have a website strategy session where we'll sit down, we'll talk about what pages, what's that goal of their website, and even talking a little bit about their client journey or their customer journey. So, okay, so once they do complete your form or they do download that investment guide or they do sign up on your list, well then what comes next? And so getting a clear picture on that experience that their client is having in regards to kind of the overall big picture strategy. But in regards to like the branding and the aesthetic and making sure we're telling a story and so forth, in regards to the design of it all, is getting really clear on not just their services and having them clearly articulate their services, but really knowing their target audience and more specifically, like their ideal client. So who are we speaking to here? Yeah, we kind of have this audience. Like for me, I've got, interior designer. That's kind of the target audience. And then I have my ideal clients, like a very specific person in mind. I know her story. I know her family. I know what her husband's like. I know what she does on the weekend and where she lives. And so getting really clear on that, there are struggles, there are pain points there, and the experience that they want to create for that. So getting all of that out, I have a 5-part brand assignment that guides them through the prep process. So essentially getting everything that's in their head about their business out and getting it into my head, and then creating a design and a brand and the visuals alongside the website that's really strategic and built around that. And I will say, I always recommend that they also hire a copywriter too. And so I have recommendations that I do. And some people will write their own copy, and that's fine. And if they do, I will read through it as I'm designing. I will help guide them through that process. But copywriters are so skilled at what they do in regards to essentially doing the same thing, pulling out that target audience, pulling out who your ideal client, helping you articulate your services really clearly if you need that. And so when you do come to my start date, like the start date of your project, you kind of have that out of the way. You don't have to worry about it. You've got someone, and probably the biggest headache that they have is to gather all of their photos and put them in a folder, And so once that start date does roll around, I actually have a 30-day process that I do. So I've done this where it's taken 4 months, it's taken 2 months, 3 months, and I really found that 30 days is that sweet spot, because it just allows us to be excited, and it allows it not to take a whole quarter up of their business. They're busy. And so I've
heard people that are like 8 and 9 months in the build, and I'm like, you better have some killer, like you better have a whole store online if it's taking you that long, because that is a long time to build a web. Like I would lose so much interest that by the time it was built, I would feel like I needed to build it again, that it would be so outdated.
Yes. And I mean, think about how much your business can evolve in 8 months. Right. And then you have this website that you're like,
or you're having to use the old one that you have for the next 9 months, and you're not even happy about it. Yeah. It's miserable.
Yes, exactly. So I've always been a systems girl. So people they come to me obviously for the website and the branding. They leave and they're just like, I love your systems. I use Asana, I use project management. Everything is very streamlined. I am a type A, deadline oriented type of girl. Everything is super on point. And so within that, we can do that 30-day process. So the beginning, it starts with the homepage design mockup and their brand design elements. So their logos, their colors, fonts, all work together. So I used to send like, here's a logo, and be like, okay, kind of like the story, like, okay, well, that looks funny on a white piece of paper or in a mock-up even. And so now I say, here's your homepage. Like, this is what it will look like. This is how we can use your logo. This is what the footer, all of that kind of experience there. We go through 2 rounds of refinements, and then we go into the staging site. And then they get a link to review the staging site. So essentially exactly what it looks like on their live domain. 2 full rounds of refinements there where they can give feedback and make copy tweaks if they need to, swap photos if they don't like the ones that are in there. And then we prep them for launch, which is usually a Monday. So it's about 4 weeks. And then that next Monday, we prep for their launch. And one thing that's a little bit different too is I'm definitely not one of those website designers who's like, and the website's mine forever, like don't touch it or you'll break it. I want them to have that freedom and flexibility to go in and swap a photo, add copy, add a new page, add some blog posts if you want. But I do also do long-term care plans for the large group of clients who are like, I don't want to touch my website ever again. Here, you do it and I'll just tell you what I need, or if I need something new. So I offer those services as well after launching.
That's awesome. Well, Katie, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight. Where can people find out more about you and about your website and how to get one of their own?
Sure, absolutely. So they can go to katieobrien.com. So all my information is on there. And then if they wanted to schedule a call or to reach out, they could just use that contact form. There'll be lots of book a call buttons on there, lots of calls to action. And then I'm always on Instagram as well at Katie O'Brien Web Design.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to share your expertise and your knowledge, and to give our listeners something to think about as they go look at their own website.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Thanks, Katie, for sharing your expertise with us and assisting us in perhaps looking at our website through fresh eyes. Strategy is equally important when building a business as it is when building a website. So if you want to talk about how to build a company that allows you to do your best work while serving your ideal client, apply for a discovery call on my website at scarletthreadconsulting.com. I would love to help you become more profitable because we all know profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening and stay creative and business minded.